Good morning. My name is Chris O'Brien. I'm a master's level certified addiction professional in the state of Florida. I have a master's degree in counseling, a graduate certification in addictive and compulsive behaviors. I've worked in over 20 treatment centers and seen some 1,500 clients over the last 10 years. For a variety of reasons, I've studied and attended over a dozen recovery fellowships. I speak to you today not as a member of any fellowship, but as a mental health professional, an amateur historian, and an avid student of the human experience. I intend to engage the viewer in an examination of recovery fellowships. The goal is to increase understanding of these fellowships so that more people can benefit from their mission. Substance disorders, commonly called addiction, are characteristically chronic, progressive, relapsing, and fatal. Compare that diagnosis to research into the effectiveness of recovery fellowship. In a scholarly, peer-reviewed study of persons presenting with alcohol disorder severe, Moose and Moose found that persons who had active participation in AA had a rate of recovery double that of persons who were not so active. 60% of those with alcohol use disorder severe who had active participation in AA were abstinent at 16 years. So with peer-reviewed evidence that recovery fellowships actually will save people's lives, the question is, why are people reluctant to attend recovery fellowships? That's the question. So I ask you, why is it that people would be reluctant to attend recovery fellowships?
I can tell you why. It's because it's just a bunch of drunks and junkies sitting around talking about their troubles. That's why. Yeah.
I can tell you why. It's just a bunch of people standing around talking about their feelings. Yuck. Yuck.
What is recovery? Well, there's no other explanation. Bill W. and Dr. Bob were extraterrestrials. I have to apologize. Sorry. I just couldn't help that. So let's get back to the discussion. Recovery is popularly seen as originating from Alcoholics Anonymous, noted by Google as one of the greatest social organizations ever known. From the foreword of the first edition of AA in 1939, which was originally entitled A Way Out, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Immediately we see a form of the word recovery. So the question I pose here is, what is recovery? The book struggles to define recovery thus. From Roman numeral page 29. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. Again, a form of the word recovery. Looking again at some of the publications of AA and other fellowships. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, which describes the 12 steps. In the foreword, AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in nature, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. Once again, we have this spiritual experience thing. We have the psychic change. And if you've attended many meetings, you're going to have a lot of the God stuff going on. So we can understand why people would be resistant to this psychic change, this spiritual experience, this God thing. Like, how in the world can making a pot of coffee, doing some stupid steps, help anyone recover from this chronic fatal disorder? For a better understanding, let's go back in time. AA is known to have been influenced by the Oxford group, coming from the Church of England. The God thing again. But for fun, let's go way back. When is the earliest historical event that might be the origins of recovery? How about Lao Tzu, born about 600 BC? Of the many quotes attributed, one which seems to reflect one of the core principles of recovery, from the 33rd verse of the Tao Te Ching as translated by R.L. Wing. Those who know others are intelligent. Those who know themselves have insight. Those who master others have power. Those who master themselves have strength. 2,600 years ago, a wise man, whose word has proved almost immortal, suggests that self-knowledge and mastery of oneself is admirable and beneficial. Looking at one recovery book, it says, those who do not recover are people who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. And if we look at the fourth step in recovery, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, perhaps this idea of self-knowledge is reasonably widely recommended. A little later, we find Pythagoras of Crotona, yes, the mathematician. I refer to The Life of Greece by Will Durant. Beginning on page 161, Durant notes, as a member of the Pythagorean Society, at the close of each day, they were to ask themselves what wrong they had committed, what duties they had neglected, what good they had done. How about the 10th step, purportedly authored by AA? Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Already it appears that the benefit of a personal inventory and self-knowledge have been recognized by one of the greatest minds in history. Durant continues, initiation into the Pythagorean society required, in addition to purification of the body, by abstinence and self-control. So here we are with an ancient society proposing the personal inventory and the exercise of abstinence and self-control, where AA suggests the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. So over 2,600 years ago, a fellowship recognized the importance of abstinence to achieve this personal growth. The end of the society came when the initiates entered so actively into politics that the Democratic or Popular Party of Crotona, in an ecstasy of rage, burned down their house, killed several of them, and drove the rest out of the city. So how about this AA thing? Has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name need not be drawn into any public controversy. That's tradition 10. A lesson learned perhaps from history? So the personal inventory goes back before Christ. How about this fellowship, this group thing? Karl Jaspers, a philosopher, wrote Socrates, Buddha, Confucius, and Jesus about their philosophies, translated by Mannheim, published by Harcourt Brace Jovanovic in 1957. According to Jaspers, Socrates needed people. He goes on to talk about how Socrates used people, and I've taken that and paraphrased what Socrates said, and that was, men and women gathering together and examining all sides of a question in a free and open discussion will come to a place where the truth shall reveal itself unto them. This dialogue in the search of truth was called the dialectic. Now consider the traditions of AA and a number of other fellowships. Tradition 2, for a group purpose, there is one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. So this whole group thing, these people sitting around in a circle talking about stuff, seems really kind of silly, but it's a place where the truth reveals itself to them. And that's what happens in recovery fellowships. So that's why they call them fellowships. Yes, there are steps, but there's really a power in the fellowship. It is also interesting to note that the government of Socrates was, as Durant puts it, so threatened by his ideas that they condemned him to death, and he chose the hemlock as the method of its demise. In many recovery fellowships, there's the statement that the group does not wish to engage in any controversy, like, duh. But what about the God thing? Recovery has some interesting ideas. God as you understood him. Notably, not as you believe, not as your religion demands that you believe, but God as you understood him. So let's look back at history for a view of that. Durant again reports Zeno in 301 BC set up his own school. He discoursed informally as he walked up and down under the colonnades of the Stoa Poecils, or painted porch. His school became known as the Stoics, meaning porch. Durant reports that Stoic recognized the necessity of religion as a basis for morality. That is, religion was a place where you received a package for morality. They said, since man is a part of God or nature, the problems of ethics can be easily solved. Goodness is cooperation with God or nature or the law of the world. For Stoics, there was a God, but it was not a male human entity, as suggested by Constantine in the Council of Nicaea about 325 years after Christ. So recovery fellowships expand the God option, as did the Stoics. The Stoics also suggested that it is not the pursuit of enjoyment or pleasure that brings happiness. Happiness can be found only through a rational adjust of our aims and conduct to the purposes and laws of the universe, or the laws of God. So the Stoics saw little consequence in one's concept of God. Religion was a means to arrive at a moral code of conduct, like the personal moral inventory. Cleanthes, one of the most notable Stoics, surrenders his will to God in this fashion. This is his prayer. Lead me, O God, and thou my destiny, to that one place which you will have me fill. I will follow gladly. Should I strive with thee a recreant, I needs must follow still. That is, following the will of God. It's no coincidence that when you go to recovery fellowships, they have a third step prayer. For example, the one in AA is almost identical in intent to that of Cleanthes, and it goes as this. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them will bear witness to those I would help of thy love, thy power, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. What's interesting here is the only reason to take away the difficulties is so I can be of service to others. So that prayer reflects almost exactly the prayer of Cleanthes, the Stoics. Durant further describes the Stoic. The Stoic, therefore, will shun luxury and complexity. He will content himself with little and will accept without complaint the difficulties and disappointments of life. Recovery fellowships, you're sitting in a meeting and they will say, living life on life's terms. Coming full circle to contemporary society, a movement started at the Church of England, a fellowship known as the Oxford Group. Its steps were trust God, clean house, help others. Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob, the founders of AA, expanded these 3 steps to 12, describing a more specific process for the practice. This has enabled people to conduct a personal inventory in the absence of a personal guide, such as a member of the clergy. So, looking back, we see that human beings have always proposed self-knowledge. We have asked the global questions for humans. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the meaning of life? After thousands of years, the search continues in recovery fellowships. As John Lennon suggests, imagine there's no countries living for today. The only requirement for membership is a desire to seek solutions to the dilemma which is the human condition. It matters not the symptoms or challenges which motivate us, whether it's alcohol or drugs or promiscuity or food. The human solution is universal. From 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, published by AA World Services, Box 450, Grand Central Station. AA's 12 Steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, when practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. What a profound promise. In summary, we observe that AA, NA, CA, Al-Anon, ACOA, and over 100 other recovery fellowships did not invent the personal inventory of self-examination, but each tries to offer an environment in which one might achieve that shift of consciousness, that spiritual experience, that moment of clarity. So returning to the original question, what is recovery? How about this? Recovery is a search for truth. Recovery is a striving to be the best person I can be. Recovery is a search for a meaningful existence. Recovery is the practice of service to others. Recovery is not a destination, it's a process. Know thyself. Listen to that still small voice. Josh Liebman, in a book entitled Peace of Mind, published by Simon & Schuster in 1946. Chapter 1. Even though prophets and saints berated man for his failings, they long ago understood that he is equipped with a still small voice, just as truly as he is equipped with hands and feet. Man's capacity to feel guilt when he fails to live up to the moral code demonstrates that he is a creature of conscience and spirit. And so recovery is listening to the still small voice, looking inside of us and finding out who we really are and what is our mission, what is our place in society. Returning to the Moose and Moose study, while participation in a recovery fellowship doubled the chances of abstinence, what was most notable was that the quality of life for those in recovery was remarkably superior to those who were not practicing recovery. So it's not about what we fear, it's about what we love. It's not about drinking or using, it's about living a life which is so full, rich, and rewarding that the desire to drink or use is lifted. It's not about getting out of the forest, it's about walking into the meadow. Many wonderful writings which attempt to describe or encourage this personal journey of recovery. Just one of them might suffice for a close of this discussion. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and your fellows. Clear up the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road to happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you. Until then.